The Constitution class is the Pride of Starfleet. The original Constitution class heavy cruiser was the premier frontline Starfleet vessel during the mid-23rd century. Eventually, as technology moved on, the Constitution class would be phased out, and the legacy of the ship class would live well into the 31st century. Even in the 25th century, you would still see a Constitution class around in a new design. In today's video, we look at every Constitution class starship and class design within the Star Trek universe. You'd better put seatbelts on those bridge chairs, as this is diving deep into Star Trek lore. Let's go.
My friends, we've come home.
Welcome to Trek Central, I'm your host, Captain Jack. Before we do warp into this video, if you want to keep up to date on the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media for daily updates on the Star Trek universe. As always, please let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. While you're watching, answer this question in the comments. Would you rather command an original Constitution class, or perhaps one of the newer ones like the Neo Constitution class? Comment your answers down below, because if you're talking about Star Trek, then we want to hear about it. Okay, engage. In the mid-23rd century, Starfleet commissioned and launched 12 Constitution-class starships. Construction of these ships occurred at Earth's San Francisco Fleet Yards, California, and at Luna's Tranquility Base. The USS Enterprise, USS Constellation, and USS Cayuga were all launched in 2245. The Enterprise was placed under the command of Captain Robert April. The Constitution class was designed for exploration, patrol, and defense missions. However, their design allowed them to be outfitted with the latest technology when and where needed. By the early 2250s, the Constitution class ships were considered the pride of Starfleet exploration missions and a premier vessel. Typically, these ships were attached to the front lines of Federation space for patrol and exploration of uncharted areas just within Federation borders. In 2254, new technology was installed just before the start of the Federation Klingon War. During this outbreak, Starfleet Command made the hard choice to keep the Constitution-class ships off of the front lines, mainly as a unit of last resort. Both the USS Enterprise and USS Defiant were kept away from the fighting, which took a heavy toll on their crews. Under Captain Christopher Pike's command, the Enterprise was ordered to continue on its 5-year mission. In 2265, the Constitution-class line was refitted with modern technology. For example, the Enterprise was extensively refitted this year in preparation for her first 5-year mission under Captain James T. Kirk. Around this time, Kirk's Enterprise became the second known Federation ship ever to leave the galaxy. Following her return and repair, the knowledge learned would later be used in other Constitution-class starships in 2266. 2267 saw several Constitution-class ships gather at Starbase 11 for refitting repairs. Despite the success of a Constitution-class line, the missions the ship class found itself in often resulted in a high loss rate. For example, the class often operated in highly dangerous circumstances. In the late 2260s, many Constitution-class ships were lost. For example, in 2267, the USS Constellation was lost to what we refer to as the Doomsday machine. Trek Central recently did a complete breakdown of its design. You can watch it via the link below. In 2268, the Vulcan-manned USS Intrepid was lost of all hands after a fatal encounter with a huge, simple cellular being in System Gamma 6A. Later in the same year, the USS Exeter was infected with an unknown virus, killing the entire crew save for the captain. While the ship was undamaged, it was heavily contaminated and left adrift. In the later stages of 2268, the USS Excalibur, Hood, Lexington, and Potemkin all participated in the disastrous testing of the M5 multitronic unit. In the later stages of 2268, the USS Excalibur, Hood, Lexington, and Potemkin all participated in the disastrous testing of the M5 multitronic unit. This resulted in severe damage to the Excalibur, with all her crew lost in action. The Lexington also suffered damage but was still salvageable. Around this time, the USS Defiant would respond to a distress call from an unexplored sector, which the Folian Assembly had claimed. The Defiant would fall into the Mirror Universe following a battle between the Enterprise and 2 Folian ships. In the late 2270s, the Constitution-class starships would undergo a massive refit and redesign, which would later be known as the Constitution II class line. We shall cover that in the next video segment. Before we do, we currently know of the following Constitution-class starships in service to Starfleet. The USS Enterprise was destroyed in 2285. The USS Cayuga was destroyed by the Gorn in 2259. The USS Constellation was destroyed by the Doomsday machine. The USS Defiant was lost in a spatial interface in 2268. The USS Excalibur was seemingly still active in 2384, the USS Exeter was abandoned in 2268, the USS Hood, the USS Intrepid was destroyed in 2268, the USS Lexington, the USS New Jersey was preserved at Starfleet's Fleet Museum, and the USS Potemkin was last known active in 2293. Of course, there have been multiple Constitution-class starships that have not been fully identified or confirmed as Constitution-class. For example, the USS Republic. This was a ship that James T. Kirk served on as an ensign in 2254. Many strongly believe that the Republic is a Constitution class. As the Constitution class USS Enterprise is such a famous design with a lot of history, we will keep this section brief. Matt Jeffries was responsible for designing what would become the original Constitution class USS Enterprise. Originally, both Jeffries and Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry did not want the Starship design to look anything sort of like a rocket ship used by the aerospace industry, or in popular culture. Many designs were rejected for being too conventional. Because the Enterprise was to be flashing by on screens, Jeffries wanted the design to be very simple but immediately identifiable. During a visit, both Roddenberry and NBC staff were drawn to a sketch that would be the final configuration of a Constitution class. Originally, Jeffries had made a small model of a ship and hung it upside down in his office, a design choice he had to unsell. The hull was kept smooth, with a sense that the components of the ship would be serviceable from the inside. The USS Enterprise was originally named Yorktown, but Roddenberry was fascinated with the aircraft carrier Enterprise and wanted to use that name. To this date, the Constitution class line appears in every episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the original series, and the animated series, except for the episode of The Slaver Weapon. The class has appeared over 45 times in other Star Trek movies and series. Naturally, with a modern show requiring a modern design, the Constitution class appears as a refreshed and modern design in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. This is still the same ship as it appears in the original series, which is set after Strange New Worlds, but it is just visually updated for modern entertainment standards in the 21st century. In the early 2270s, Starfleet decided to completely refit the aging Constitution class line of starships. While we know this as the Constitution II class, at the time of the introduction, it was simply known as the Constitution class refit. It was conceived initially as a part of an 18-month redesign and refit under the direction of Captain William Decker and Commander Montgomery Scott. The refit of the USS Enterprise produced an almost totally new vessel. The massive overhaul replaced nearly all major systems, making very few officers fully rated in the new design. Even before the refit was actually complete, the Constitution-class USS Enterprise would continue to serve in a prominent position for Starfleet and the Federation. However, in the 2280s, the Enterprise was reassigned as a training vessel. During the Battle of the Mutara Nebula, in which the Enterprise under Admiral James T. Kirk engaged Khan, the refit Enterprise sustained critical damage. The battle between the Enterprise and the commandeered USS Reliant caused structural damage that would be costly to repair. With the dawn of a new age of starships, which will be led by the Excelsior-class USS Excelsior, Starfleet Command declined to refit the Enterprise, given the ship was well over 20 years old and saw that her day was over. By 2286, and following the destruction of the original USS Enterprise, at least 3 Constitution II class starships were in service, including the newly launched USS Enterprise A. The new Enterprise was launched from Space Dock 1 on the orders of the Federation Council, to show appreciation of Captain James T. Kirk and his crew's efforts to prevent the whale probe from devastating Earth. In the early 2290s, many new Constitution II class ships had been put into service. For example, a special task force of Constitution II class starships, including the USS Awani, USS Eagle, USS Emden, USS Endeavour, and Potemkin, were quickly assembled to take part in Operation Retrieve. This would see the rescue of James T. Kirk and Dr. Leonard McCoy from the Klingon penal colony of Ruapenthe. It seems that although Starfleet looked to the Excelsior class as this new age, they were still building new Constitution II classes. This class line would live on in the 24th century. During the Battle of Wolf 359, which devastated a large portion of the Federation Starfleet, at least one Constitution II class starship took part in the engagement and was destroyed. Sources are conflicted on which ship this was. For a detailed breakdown of the Battle of Wolf 359, see our dedicated video here on the Trek Central channel. We know that the Constitution II class, USS Enterprise A, would be preserved at the Fleet Museum by 2401. Notably, the USS Potemkin was a refit Constitution class, much like the original USS Enterprise. The Constitution II class designation for the refit Constitution class first appeared in print in the USS Enterprise's Officer's Manual, written by Jeffrey Mandel and Doug Drexler. It concurrently appeared in the Star Trek Spaceflight Chronology, another reference book by Rick Sternbach. Both of these released around the 1980s. It seemed the designation of a Constitution II class was in competition with the unofficial Enterprise class designation. The Star Trek Picard series logs, which accompanied the third season of the new Paramount Plus series, proposed that by the 25th century, the introduction of a Constitution III class, which we'll talk about in a minute, would mean that the refit Constitution class ships had been retroactively reclassified as Constitution II class starships by Starfleet Command. Yes, I know that's confusing. The Constitution II class Enterprise A was a reuse of the refit Enterprise model built for Star Trek The Motion Picture. It was designed by Andrew Probert and Richard Taylor, particularly being based on Matt Jeffries and Mike Minor's initial design sketches for Star Trek Phase 2. Other artists also pitched in for the Constitution II class design, including Joe Jennings, Douglas Trumbull, and Harold Mickelson.
Your old command.
It's the only sway I've got.
It's the new refit Neo-Constitution class.
The late 24th century introduced a new Constitution class, the Constitution III class of starships. It was commonly known as the Neo-Constitution class, or, like its predecessors, just the Constitution class. Not many ships of this class are known. However, with that said, we know that by the early 2400s, the USS Titan A, a Constitution III class starship, had already received an NCC commission and undergone a refit. It seems the Neo-Constitution directly results from the destruction of Utopia Planitia fleet yards. This resulted in the Titan A's space frame incorporating reused and recycled components, rather than replicating, from the previous lunar class USS Titan, such as the nacelle shield mechanism and computer systems done at the fleet yards. Later in 2402, the Titan A was rechristened as the USS Enterprise G, to honour the command crew of the Galaxy-class USS Enterprise D and their actions in defeating the Borg during the Frontier Day takeover. At 560.5 meters, the Neo-Constitution class followed the traditional saucer section engineering, section warp nacelle layout standard to most Starfleet vessels. The class was designed to be an exploration vessel, but also able to provide a close support envelope at sublight speeds. It could also offer support around densely populated solar systems, which also explains the overpowered impulse engines. System-wise, the Neo-Constitution class was equipped with both deflector and metaphasic shields for defense, while armed with phaser arrays and torpedo launchers for offense. When breaking down the weapon systems, there were 7 phaser turrets, 4 phaser arrays, and 3 torpedo launchers. 2 fore, 1 aft. The Neo-Constitution class could reach the maximum speed of warp 9.99 and typically had a crew complement of around 500 personnel. Currently, the only known ship in the Neo-Constitution class line is the USS Titan A, which would later be renamed as the USS Enterprise G. Whether Starfleet would commission more of this class, or prefer to keep producing more modern inline designs such as the Sagan class and the Odyssey class, is currently unknown. Design-wise, the Neo-Constitution class was designed by veteran Star Trek designer Doug Drexler and Bill Krause, also known as Admiral Buck. Work on the design started in June 2021. The Neo-Constitution class is essentially a refinement of Bill Krause's own 6-year-old Star Trek fan design, known as the Shangri-La class. When you compare both, they are very similar. I'll leave this question while you're watching this video. Yes, another one, I know. What do you think of the Neo-Constitution class? Does it make sense in terms of a 25th century design language? Or should it just stay as the Shangri-La class for the 23rd century? Let us know what you think. Even though Starfleet and the United Federation of Planets had evolved since the time of the original Constitution class, the design name and style was still carried into the future. For example, in the 31st century, we can see Starfleet has a new Constitution class in operation. The class is not designated as a Mark IV or anything, but simply referred to as a Constitution class starship. For the sake of clarification in this video, and for not everyone getting confused, including our lovely video editor, we will refer to as the 31st century Constitution class. Like the predecessor design, it also comprised of a saucer section, a secondary hull, and 2 warp nacelles connected by pylons. Sources indicate the class measures around 1,399.82 meters in length, and could accommodate a crew of around 2,000 personnel. The class was active as early as the year 3060-90, and would still be active into the 33rd century. For example, in the 31st century, 7 of these ships were destroyed in the burn. The wrecked remains of this ship class is also spotted in 3188 above the planet of Hema. In 3190, various 31st century Constitution class starships participate in the evacuation of Earth, when the dark matter anomaly threatened the planet. The ship was still in service during the 33rd century, when several starships participated in a ceremonial honor formation at the Federation headquarters, to launch the USS Discovery and Zora's Red Directive mission. Perhaps with the new Star Trek series of Star Trek Starfleet Academy, that in this era of the Star Trek universe, we might see more of a 31st century Constitution class starship design. Known starships include the USS Armstrong, USS Excalibur, and USS Noble. The 31st Century Constitution class was designed by Ryan Denning. The class name of Constitution class comes from the updated 2nd edition of Star Trek Shipyards, Starfleet Ships 2295 to the Future. It's a reference book. This was released in August 2021 and highlighted the USS Armstrong. Originally, the Armstrong was slated to have a model of a design made. Prototypes were already made and produced. Unfortunately, the release never happened, as the company who were making the models, Eagle Moss Collections, went bankrupt in August 2022. In Star Trek Online, this Starship class is referred to as a Kirk class design. In the alternate reality known as the Kelvin timeline, the Constitution class was launched by Starfleet in the latter half of the 23rd century. The ship class has been active since at least 2255, as the USS Enterprise was built in Riverside, Iowa on Earth. The design of the Kelvin timeline Constitution class differed from the Prime timeline Constitution class we spoke about at the start of this video. The reason for this design change was due to the temporal incursion of Nero in 2233, which resulted in the destruction of the USS Kelvin. This event would change Starfleet's focus and also affected their shipbuilding plans, producing a different Constitution class USS Enterprise than we would see in the Prime timeline. The Enterprise would serve in a variety of tasks, but would only be placed in a 5-year mission in 2260. In 2263, the same year that the Kelvin Enterprise was destroyed, another Constitution class was undergoing construction at Starbase Yorktown. After the Enterprise crew saved the day, this new Constitution class was completed and christened the USS Enterprise A, and placed under the command of the original Enterprise crew as their new starship. Now, we could speculate that the Enterprise A is perhaps the Kelvin timeline version of the Constitution class refit. The previous official Starships collection has confirmed that the Enterprise A is in fact just a modified version of the Kelvin Constitution class, so not a refit. The Kelvin timeline Constitution class was designed by Ryan Church, in which he based the design of the original Constitution class design done by Matt Jeffries. The earliest designs of the new Enterprise were produced by Tim Flattery. The visuals then he produced were a bit too close to the familiar movie version of the Enterprise. Abrams and Scott Chambliss, the production designer, wanted to find a design that was less familiar. Church's designs impressed them both. Previously, Church had worked on both Star Wars and Avatar. The executives were very happy with Church's designs, and they were passed over to ILM, who started filling out details and making a simple computer model. At one point during the design, Alex Yeager suggested they should consider giving the Enterprise heavier panel lines. This would have made it look clunkier and given a more sense of scale. While ILM did produce these drawings, as seen on screen, the team decided to take a different approach. The obvious design difference from the modern Kelvin timeline Enterprise is the bulbous nacelles. On the classic Enterprise, the nacelles had been a simpler shape. Ryan Church started to explore new shapes for the iconic feature. At the end of the concept design phase, Church had designed an Enterprise that was recognisably similar to Jeffries' Enterprise, but still had more sweeping organic lines and pronounced shapes. This included the nacelles, that I can only assume were inspired by the Planet Killer or Doomsday machine, whichever you want to call it. The fact is, now I've said it, you're gonna see it, so you're welcome. While still sleek, the Enterprise had various raised sections along the hull, including cowling on the nacelles. There was also exaggerated separation lines on the engineering hull. The rear end of the ship was more swept back, allowing for a pronounced hull and shuttle bay. The VFX team went to great lengths to experiment of how the ship's nacelles could light up when the Enterprise was travelling at warp. Eventually, director J.J. Abrams was happy with the ship, and ILM produced a final version of the USS Enterprise for the Kelvin timeline. The multi-tone deflector dish had been added and a familiar Aztec pattern was placed on the ship. So, that is every Constitution class in Starfleet within the Star Trek universe. Of course, we've not covered mirror universe ones, typically they are just copies of our actual known Enterprise, so you can use your imagination for that one. Did you answer my question at the start of this video? If not, here it is again. Which one of these ship classes would you prefer to command? It's a tough one for me, but you can't beat a classic. If you want to keep up to date on the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can also follow us on social media or join our community Discord server. For now, I've been Captain Jack, thanks for watching and we'll see you next time. Live long and prosper, my friends.